You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. We'll have more news this evening, but first...
The latest Gene-ology, a Roddenberry podcast.
Episode 41. Episode In Laredo. Welcome to Mission Log Gene-ology. I'm Ashley Thomas.
And I'm Earl Green. Each week on Gene-ology, we examine a script or a show from the years when Gene Roddenberry was simply a very busy TV writer years before he became known as the creator of Star Trek.
Along the way, we look for signs of the kinds of morals, meanings, and messages that Gene would become famous for planting in episodes of his most famous future work. Earl will be back with trivia in just a moment, but first, here's how you can reach us. Gene-ology is meant to be entertaining and informative, but it's also just the beginning of an ongoing conversation about the works of Gene Roddenberry. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on X and Facebook at missionlogpod. While you're at it, please leave us a rating or review at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And please remember, your comments could be used on a future installment of Gene-ology. And now, this week's trivia. Take it away, Earl.
Thank you, Ashley, and welcome, Ashley and everyone, to Season 3 of Have Gun Will Travel. For the second time in the show's history, we are starting a solid 3 weeks of consecutive episodes written by Gene Roddenberry. The episode aired on September 19th, 1959 on CBS, where it was part of a jam-packed Saturday night schedule on that network. CBS at this point effectively owned Saturday night, starting at 7:30 Eastern with Perry Mason, followed at 8:30 by the Western series Wanted Dead or Alive, which made a star out of one Steve McQueen. Mr. Lucky, a modern-day show about a gambler, broke up all the horse opera at 9 p.m. Eastern, with Have Gun following at 9:30, leading into Gunsmoke, which was the number one show on TV at 10 Eastern. Have Gun was still solidly ensconced at number 3 in the ratings. Perry Mason and Wanted Dead or Alive were also consistently rated in the top 10. Have Gun was up against the Lawrence Welk Show on ABC, and, at least until January 1960, opposite the short-lived David Hedison Cold War spy series Five Fingers on NBC. Neither Welk nor Five Fingers ever managed to crack the top 30, despite a lot of guest star power being thrown at Five Fingers. Episode in Laredo, very good, Gene. It is an episode, and it does happen in Laredo, boasts quite a few familiar faces. Gene Lyons plays Sam Tuttle, and he'd be back for one more unrelated guest shot in the 4th season. Gene's a familiar face from TV, whether you remember him as Commissioner Randall from Ironside, or from his many guest-starring roles on other shows, including the role of Ambassador Robert Fox in the Star Trek episode A Taste of Armageddon. Put a pin in that. It comes back later. Returning for her 3rd guest shot on Have Gun Will Travel is none other than Norma Crane, who we talked about as the star of the first season episode Ella West, back in episode 34 of this very podcast. J. Patrick O'Malley guest stars as Logan here. This British-born actor and singer's distinguished career stretched from the 1940s through the early 80s, but while he did appear in many a live-action show, O'Malley is Golden Age Disney animation voice acting royalty. His voice graced such films as The Wind in the Willows, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, The Jungle Book, Alice in Wonderland, and 101 Dalmatians. There's a chance you might hear his voice and think, wait, this is that guy. Because he was. We lost J. Patrick O'Malley in 1985. This is one of 13 episodes of Have Gun Will Travel to be directed by Buzz Kulik. Still in the early part of his career, Buzz, a former director of TV commercials, would become renowned for such TV movies as Brian's Song in 1971, 1984's George Washington miniseries, and the 1989 miniseries Around the World in 80 Days, starring Pierce Brosnan and Eric Idle. But long before then, we'll see more of Buzz's work on a Gene Roddenberry project when he directs an early episode of The Lieutenant in 1963. 1. You're not going to believe this, but it was a dark and stormy night. Paladin rides up to the Euphoria Hotel in Laredo, Texas, and while it's open for business, there's no one at the front desk, but there are 2 men nearby. The older man, Logan, tells Paladin there are no vacancies. Try the next hotel down the road. When Paladin points out that the next hotel down the road is over 50 miles away, the younger man, Kovac, punches him in the stomach and then breaks a chair over Paladin. As the 2 men move to drag Paladin to the door to throw him back out into the storm, Paladin shakes it off and comes out swinging, picking up Kovac and throwing him into a table. A furious fight ensues, and Paladin, having walked in from the rain to find himself in this mess, is giving full vent to his crankiness. Kovac professes to be a gunfighter himself, but the man he works for, Sam Tuttle, is an even more impressive gunfighter. Paladin has to continue roughing Kovac up for the man to even tell him that Tuttle will be riding into town at 9 in the morning. Paladin says he'll leave by 8, but he does need a room. Logan obliges. As Paladin starts up the stairs to his room, the shadow of a man drawing a gun can be seen. Paladin already has his hand on his gun and spins and fires through the railing on the stairs, killing Kovac in self-defense, leaving Logan with an unenviable cleanup job. But first, Logan goes to send word to Tuttle about what's happened. In the morning, Paladin comes down the stairs to find Sam Tuttle is waiting for him. Tuttle wasn't exactly Kovac's biggest fan himself, but the man was working for him, so in Tuttle's opinion, now he has to kill Paladin. Worse yet, everyone in town knows it. A crowd has gathered outside the hotel to watch it all go down. Tuttle admits he's not looking forward to it, but if word gets out that he let Kovac's killer go, more will turn up to challenge him. But for right now, let's have a hearty breakfast before the bloodshed begins. Act 2. Breakfast is pretty friendly enough that Tuttle has ordered a bottle of champagne. Tuttle has outdrawn 31 men, and he's tired of the reputation that's brought him. It seems like everyone wants a ringside seat to number 32. Paladin suggests that there is a way out of this that preserves Tuttle's reputation, but Tuttle is tired of talking. The 2 men stare each other down in the dining area, hands hovering over their holsters ready to draw. And, oh, hey, the door opens and a lady walks in. This is Miss Eileen Smith, and her son, who's excited that he gets to see famous gunfighter Sam Tuttle on his 9th birthday. But surely Tuttle's not about to get into a duel with his new friend Paladin. Eileen gives Tuttle 1 hour to talk to her son. As Tuttle talks to his biggest fan, Paladin quietly asks Eileen to have a talk with him. Act 3. And what could Eileen Smith possibly have to tell Paladin? Maybe that the boy is Sam Tuttle's son, though the boy doesn't know that. Paladin suggests that Eileen and her son could move to San Francisco and start over without the baggage that comes with staying in Laredo. Paladin even tries to convince Tuttle that he could do that too. Be part of a family. Start from scratch. But Tuttle has gotten used to being in charge. He would rather remain a big fish in a small pond than have to start over, and that matters more to him than the boy does. Eileen is crushed. Sam says he hopes Eileen finds a better man next time. She remarks that she couldn't do much worse, and with that, she leaves. So, hey, about that gunfight that was about to happen. The 2 men circle each other once more with no further unfinished business between them. Finally, Tuttle tells Paladin the hotel's booked up. Paladin needs to leave. As Paladin goes to get his hat and his coat, Logan, the hotel clerk, complains that Tuttle is letting Paladin go. Tuttle tells him to shut up, but Logan means business. He pulls a gun from behind the hotel front desk and shoots Tuttle in the back. As he rants about how people will come from miles around to see the spot where Sam Tuttle fell, Logan prepares to shoot him a second time, but Paladin shoots Logan first. None of that, however, helps Sam Tuttle, who breathes his last in the hotel floor. Paladin emerges from the hotel and will not be taking any questions at this time from the morbidly curious onlookers. He asks where Eileen lives. It sounds like he'll be providing her and her son, Sam Tuttle's son, with a ride to San Francisco. The end.
Thank you so much for that excellent recap, Earl, as always.
It's a bit of a bummer in the middle of your summer.
Yeah, summer bummer. Nobody has time for that. Well, I hope they do, because I want them to listen to us, so.
Exactly. It's a very compact bummer if you listen to our podcast as opposed to watching the show. Although, I do recommend, because Have Gun Will Travel is easy to find.
Yep.
Whether it's local reruns, cable, streaming, whatever. It's on Pluto. I hope folks are actually watching along with us.
Yeah.
Instead of just taking our word for it.
Right, yeah. When you can watch it for the very low price of free with ads, it's not that bad.
That's true. Okay, I have a question for you, Ashley.
Sure.
When Paladin checks in, he goes over to the check-in book at the front desk of the hotel, and he signs something. What did he write down?
I would have loved to have a shot at that, because I keep thinking, this guy's got to have a first name, right?
I mean, did he put his actual name? Has his secret identity been exposed? Or did he just write down, P. Aladdin, or, Alan Smithy, whatever?
Yeah, that definitely has crossed my mind more than once as we've been watching through this, so.
Well, the funny thing is, minor point of trivia, there were some Have Gun Will Travel novels.
Ah, I did not know
during
that.
and after the show's run on TV.
Very cool.
There was one for younger readers, but there were also a couple of adult novels. One of those, although it is based on a television episode, which was, I believe, the premiere of Season 5, which was Paladin's origin story. To flesh it out to novel length, the author had to invent a bunch of things. One of the things he invented for that book was Paladin's full name, which, according to that novel, was Clay Alexander.
Fascinating. But
since that name comes from outside the TV show itself, it is not considered official by most fans of Have Gun Will Travel.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, and so, yes, if you think this is a modern invention, sorry. People have been discussing for decades whether or not something is canonical or non-canonical in Have Gun Will Travel.
Fun fact, hate to burst everybody's bubble, everyone is a nerd about something. Doesn't have to be stereotypical nerdy things. It can also be Have Gun Will Travel.
Exactly.
Oh well.
I have another question about the hotel. Is everyone in this hotel, which is supposedly full up, everyone a really heavy sleeper?
I mean, it was raining pretty hard when Paladin rolled into town, so...
Okay, so maybe we have some white noise helping people along, or at least some gray noise there. Paladin is wiping the floor with Kovac in the dining area.
Yeah, you'd think that would wake somebody up, but I got the impression that, no, the hotel is empty because Mr. Tuttle is coming into town. He's booked it up.
Yeah. So I don't think there's anyone else up those stairs, because he's literally throwing this guy through furniture. Mm-hmm. And ultimately he shoots him. And, I don't care how many mints you put on my pillow, I am probably going to complain to someone about all that noise. Mm-hmm. But I might hold off till morning so I don't complain to, the person who's shooting people.
Right. Yeah, that would be a shelter-in-place kind of situation. It's like, let's lock the door. Let's put the chair under the doorknob. Let's wait until daylight to figure out how to get out of here. Because, ugh.
Yeah, still, I'm going to be letting the Euphoria Hotel have it with both barrels on Yelp.
Mm-hmm.
My big takeaway from this episode, before we get into the more serious discussion, is the mad amount of respect I have for Norma Crane.
Right? She was so good in this.
I knew going into this is the same actress who played Ella West. At no point did I look at her and think, oh, hey, it's Ella West.
I didn't even know it was her until the credits rolled.
Yeah. Due credit should be given to the hair and makeup and wardrobe departments.
Right.
Because she looks completely different. But the performance and just how she carries herself is so different than what we got from her in Ella West. although the thought occurred to me after going back and checking some credits, in addition to seeing Norma's apparently vast acting range here, it is also possible that what we're seeing is the difference between Buzz Kulik directing and Andy McLaughlin directing. The difference was huge. I think the comparison to Yosemite Sam came up a lot when we were talking Ella West.
Right.
There's none of that here.
None whatsoever. And I've mentioned on the show before, I am somewhat face blind. But once I realized it was her, I was like, oh, okay, I see it now. But yeah, really understated, good dramatic performance here, and the little that she's given to do, she just really shines. Really, makes a lot with not much.
She knocked these guys off the screen.
Oh yeah.
I mean that moment where Tuttle tells her, well, I hope you find a better man wherever you're going. And she's like, well, I could hardly do worse. It's like,
ooh.
Sick burn.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's such an understated delivery.
Yeah.
She's not in his face with that. Mm-hmm. She's not even looking him in the eye. She's not addressing him. She's just like, it's not even worth looking you in the eye. And there's not a lot of funsies in this episode, so I have a feeling our observations are going to be kind of short. I have thoughts on Tuttle. Yeah,
I do too. Big props to Norma Crane for knocking it out of the park with this episode. She did awesome.
Absolutely. It would be really difficult to go back and watch Ella West now.
Yeah.
Knowing that she is capable of this, and that, we could have had that kind of gravitas with Ella West.
Yeah, for sure. Shifting topics a little bit. One of the other observations I had about this episode is this entire ordeal could have been dealt with, or it wouldn't have even happened if they'd just given Paladin a room and left him alone. I mean,
yeah.
Of course we wouldn't have an episode, but I'm just like, dude, you got yourself killed. Now this other guy's getting killed. And all for, nothing. You just raised a bunch of hullabaloo, and all you had to do was let the guy have a place to sleep. Because obviously the hotel was empty. It was booked up because this guy's coming in town, but he's not coming in until the morning. Give him a place to sleep. Don't make a big fuss about it. Let him go on his way. No biggie.
I don't work in the hospitality industry, so I'm not sure how that works, but it seems like there was an easier way to deal with this. However, I feel like where Logan, the guy who is running the hotel, is concerned, finding an easier way is not in his vocabulary. Because his actions in Act 1 come into very sharp focus by the end of the show. He's trying to stage manage something to bring these, mawkish townsfolk to the hotel as some kind of attraction. And so everything he is doing, he's trying to wrangle Tuttle's 30-second gunfight into happening, even though Tuttle really doesn't want anything to do with it. Mm-hmm. Paladin didn't sign up for any of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Logan is some shadowy mastermind pulling everyone's puppet strings. He is just a greedy little man with more respect for the bottom line than for people's lives.
Yeah.
And when Tuttle doesn't perform like a trained poodle, just shoot him in the back. With a side order of trying to frame Paladin for it.
Right.
Logan doesn't care who's laying dead in his floor at the end of whatever happens. He just wants a dead body there so he can charge people admission to come look.
Get the world's biggest rubber band ball or something. Come on, think of something different. This is not okay.
Or what's that thing that I've seen, the world's biggest strawberry? It's not a real strawberry, but it is fiberglass or what, but there's a giant strawberry somewhere. And that is that town's claim to fame.
Mm-hmm.
Or what was the thing that popped up in the Mission Log Discord recently? The world's biggest potato.
Yeah.
Again, I'm guessing probably not a real potato. And a very limited use unless the world's biggest tub of sour cream is right behind it.
And the world's biggest stick of butter.
Yeah, exactly.
World's biggest bowl of chopped chives.
And I will be pulling up with the world's biggest container of white cheddar powder, because that, for me, is an absolute Spud essential, a phrase that I was not anticipating uttering in this podcast and should probably actively avoid ever saying again.
I like it. I'll roll up with some bacon and cheddar, so...
Okay, hey, we're all on the same team here. Anything better than killing somebody in the hotel lobby?
Right.
Anything.
All of these ideas were significantly better. Spud Essential is a significantly better idea than shooting a guy.
Yeah, and also Spud Essentials is my next band name.
Man, I think all of these need to be like the taglines for the podcast. Spud Essential is better than shooting a guy. So,
yeah, we should stop naming the episodes after the episodes of the show. This should be like episode 41, Spud Essentials. Ashley, last week we were discussing the return of Roy Crowder. We noted that Paladin was frustrated with the utter futility of that situation, what he perceived as the futility of that situation. Feels to me like this week, Paladin's futility problem is amped up considerably. He would really like to get home without killing anyone, if he could possibly avoid it. Pretty cranky with Kovac, but I doubt he would have killed Kovac if Kovac hadn't given him a very good reason to.
Yeah, I would agree. Again, you could have just solved the whole situation by letting him have a room and letting him go on his merry way.
Exactly. If a theme is emerging in Gene's scripts here, rather than resistance being futile, it seems like it's pointless to try to resist futility. Paladin is in a grim line of work, and ultimately I think he would rather have a day where he gets to chuckle to himself while watching Samuel Abijanian's family stomp grapes before the wedding, or negotiate an alliance between the various families cast out of Moon Ridge, Colorado. He would rather do that sort of thing than have to watch another life end senselessly. And it's really kind of interesting picking this theme out, because we are not dealing with serialized TV here. The show is not connecting these dots, although in his own mind, jumping from... The only person who has watched this show the way we are watching it, the only person who's gone through Have Gun this way, was Gene Roddenberry himself, if you think about it. He was the last person to go from Gene's script to Gene's script because he was writing them.
Right.
It could be that in his own mind, Gene was connecting these dots. But because there were weeks and weeks of shows between some of his scripts, that was not necessarily landing for the audience. Although I do wonder about the next few episodes, because we have another one of these little TV strip malls where, written by Gene Roddenberry one week, written by Gene Roddenberry the next week, and the next week. I wonder if it stands out then.
Good question. The big takeaway I had from this episode was that, is this Gene's treatise on toxic masculinity?
I think you're onto something, because my dear friend Mr. Norman Lau has contemplated the possibility that Gene is addressing that very topic in past scripts.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you guys have discussed the masculinity script
yes.
in the past, and there's a certain marks you must hit here. But Paladin says you could just not do this.
Yeah.
And be done with it. And go be responsible for your wife and kid, but instead you're choosing this because you care more about being a big man or having your name, somebody put some respect on that name. I was like, who cares? To quote the great philosopher Tywin Lannister, anyone who says, I am the king, is no king at all.
Oh my gosh, I just had a realization. You know what Sam Tuttle cares about more than his kid? The blue check mark.
Is absolutely what it is.
It's the blue check mark on social... Oh, good grief. Sam.
I don't know how to say this without using, something saying something slightly profane, but so I know you may want to edit this out of the...
I know the guy who has his finger on the bleep button, so go for it.
Okay, I mean, this is effectively like a dick-waving contest.
Yeah, it really is. And the thing is, Paladin did not sign up for this contest.
No, he didn't. He's like, I would like not to participate, or to quote the great philosopher Taylor Swift, I would like to be excused from this narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Tywin Lannister and Taylor Swift in the same conversation, as you do.
The literary greats. But yeah, I get the sense that Paladin is dancing madly on the head of a pin, trying to find a solution that lets everyone get out of this with a normal life and their lives. And all Sam has to do is say, I want to slip away in the night and go off with Eileen and the kid. The kid never even gets a name.
No, he's just listed as young boy in the credits. Young boy.
All Sam has to do is say, okay, I want this more than I want to be the big man in Laredo with the blue check mark. And Paladin would engineer any situation, any cover story. Go out behind the building and fire shots into the air and say, oh, there was a gunfight and nobody saw it. He would do anything to get everyone out of this with a sane and sensible solution that leaves them alive. And no one's letting him. This also sharpens the focus on the outcome of the return of Roy Carter for me. That makes a lot more sense now. Because Paladin just doesn't... It's not that he doesn't have the stomach to kill. He doesn't see the point.
Yeah.
He doesn't see the point in, what was the phrase from several episodes ago, spending that $1 of lead.
Yeah.
Because even the life of someone as lost as Sam Tuttle, or the guy who basically resulted in Robert April dying, even those lives are worth more than that $1 of lead. Although Tuttle is barely worth more, because he will not risk giving up his status to raise his own son. So in my mind, Tuttle is only barely worth more than a bullet. He's like a bullet 50.
He is so much more concerned with everybody knowing that he is wearing the big boy pants in the town than he is about being a good man, about being a good husband, being a good father.
Yeah.
I don't understand that at all.
And I weep for that kid, for Eileen's kid, because I feel like Sam Tuttle is the result of an upbringing like that with no father figure, no strong father figure to impart any of this knowledge of the value of life to his son. This kid, if he stayed in Laredo, would stand a very good chance of turning out just like his dad.
Absolutely.
And so, cheers to Eileen for wanting to get the kid the hell out of Laredo. Cheers to Paladin for presumably giving them a ride. Like he's going to go down to the shop that we all visited playing the Oregon Trail and hook up a little thing to his horse so he can give them a ride out to San Francisco.
Right.
But he shouldn't have had to do any of that.
No. I wonder if he did the murder hobo and loot the guy's pockets and say, here, this is what he had on him.
What was the joke about computer role-playing games? That spider had $5.
Right?
The real gut punch is the show spends so much time... It makes us feel for Sam Tuttle. It makes us feel sorry for him, like, oh man, we hope he doesn't have to do this. And then he reveals his true colors, and then it's like, okay, Sam's not in the credits. Sam's not making it through this episode. And he's just revealed himself to be no kind of man at all. You're kind of ready for him to go. He's beneath contempt.
Yeah, it's a sad situation. I don't understand how anyone could make that choice, and yet there are people who make that choice every day. Earl, this is a really challenging episode, my friend.
Can I tell you something? I normally, notes and recaps, I normally have it down in 2 watches. A watch and a rewatch. This time, I went back for a 3rd course of the meal. Because I already realized I had very complicated feelings, and I was like, am I feeling the things that I think I'm feeling about this? And it really does pay to go back and rewatch this one with the full knowledge going in that the kid is Sam's kid. That this is not just some random kid who's like the kid from the Coke commercial. Hey, Mean Joe Green, have a Coke.
Right.
This is his son. His son doesn't know that he is his son, but Sam knows it.
Yeah. This one, I feel like it feels like a cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Gene is talking to, in particular, the men in the audience of what are you choosing over your family? What are you choosing, instead of doing right by them? Are you choosing just to make your own name great? And if you're doing that, is your name really all that great to start with?
Yeah, as someone who has a couple of kids, and both boys at that, anything else that anyone might consider my legacy pales in comparison to that. Because my personal feeling on that is once you've brought this child into the world, your function at that point is to make them the best person that you could possibly leave in the gap that you will someday leave behind. This is your replacement in the human race. Don't screw it up. And so it's really hard for me to watch this story about a man who's just like, no, I've got things in my life that are more important than that. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah, and for me, as someone who doesn't have kids, I have a niece and a nephew, and
you still have an impact, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone who has, for various reasons, made it a point to take interest in the younger people in my circle, my community and my family. I don't know if we'll ever have kids, and I want them to know they're loved and that they are capable of doing amazing things and doing great things and doing good things. And I mean, not to get too personal, but I feel like, what legacy I want to leave behind is that, hey, I love you. And you matter. I would hope that gets translated in some way to my niece and nephew and other people in my life. But I don't have the capacity to understand how anyone can make a choice other than that.
Right there with you.
Yeah.
So, if anyone wonders why Gene Roddenberry got so much work as a TV writer at this stage in his career, consider this, and this is more production nerd stuff than really a moral meaning or a message. I'll get there, although I think I may have just tipped my hand considerably. Not much of a poker player, me.
Same.
Aside from the exterior shots where Paladin arrives in the storm and then leaves in broad daylight, this entire episode happens on one set. A couple of tables and a chair or two are broken, mainly using Kovac. The railing up the hotel stairs gets smashed up. 3 shots total are fired in this episode. A lot of the episode is standing around and talking, and yet it is completely gripping because the stakes are set up very early. The end result of all that talk is going to be that one man lives and another man dies. The performances are top-notch here. I suppose I'm doing kind of the equivalent of mission logs. Does it hold up? This one really holds up. Richard Boone is presumably now splinter-free, and he is in fine form selling the gravity of the situation. And Gene Lyons, as Tuttle, matches him blow for blow. And then Norma Crane comes in and very quietly makes us forget that these guys are even in the same room with her. There is real intensity and honesty to the performances. And the one thing you walk away from is the lingering smell of so much regret, of time and life wasted, hanging really heavily in that one set. Is it a talky show? Yes it is. But that puts me in mind of Peter Capaldi's Doctor Who speech, that even once a fight begins, assuming it doesn't bring about extinction for everyone, the end result is that both sides will still eventually have to sit down and talk it out. So why don't we skip the fighting and go straight to the sit down and talk it out part so no one gets hurt? Paladin tries as hard as he can to bring about an equitable solution that leaves everyone alive. I am not sure that him telling Eileen that she has more pride than common sense, I think that might be misplaced, because I feel like that applies more to Sam Tuttle than it does to her. But there are plenty of mistakes to go around among the three main characters in this show. And then at the end we get a seemingly random act of senseless violence that relieves Paladin of all of his options. Do you remember the DS9 episode Duet?
Yes.
Did this out of nowhere complication/resolution not smack of Duet? Rando just jumps in from the crowd and stabs Maritza. This reminded me a lot of that. Logan shooting Tuttle in the back. Where on earth did that come from? And yet, it puts everything that Logan did earlier in the episode in perspective. He's like the guy who's jumping around a couple of kids trying to go, fight. Fight in the parking lot, 3 o'clock, even though these kids don't want to fight. But he's trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here. Unlike James Kirk, who says, in A Taste of Armageddon, a bit of a coincidence here since we have Ambassador Fox in this episode, Kirk says in that episode that we can admit that we're killers, but we are not going to kill today. Paladin had to kill today. And that wasn't in his day planner, and he is not happy about it. And all this story left Paladin with was the least best option to set things right. And if you can do all that in 26 minutes with only one set needing to be built, that is how you get invited back to write more episodes.
Mission Log Gene-ology is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you would like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. If you have any material that might be of interest to us that isn't already in the Roddenberry archive, drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com.
On the next Gene-ology, Le Girls. Special thanks to consulting producers Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Schabel, Paul Shadwell, and David Takachi.
We'll be back next week with more of your favorite programs. This concludes our broadcast day.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.